Small world, huh?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
What was Michigan win?
I don't know, it was Iowa.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. And I want to welcome you to the April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Rochester Planning Commission. Could I have the clerk call the roll? Who is clerking tonight?
So let me just say thank you to Leanne, who's doing our Zoom meeting, and our Deputy Clerk, Brian D'Annunzio, is stepping in. I really appreciate his help.
Welcome,
So
Brian.
he's taking care of all the stuff like that tonight.
Are you going to call the roll?
Yes.
You're on.
Chairman McGee,
Here.
Vice Chair Hauser,
Here.
Mayor Bixon,
Here.
Secretary Sage,
Here.
Commissioners Gasson,
Here.
Kenjuk,
Here.
King,
Here.
Lord,
Here.
and Stone is absent.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a quorum. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comment. I just want to thank my fill-ins. Matt isn't here, but Christian, thanks for filling in.
Nice to have you back.
Well, I was away on very serious business,
Sabbatical, yes.
and I'm glad to be back. We'll open the floor for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who has any comment they would like to make to the commission, preferably items not later on the agenda? And then, Brian, I'm going to ask you, is there anyone waiting electronically to speak?
Leanne would know, yep.
Is there
No,
someone?
Your Honor, I do not see anyone in the waiting room.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, approval of the minutes. And these would be the minutes of March 16th.
So moved.
Moved by the mayor to approve the minutes. Do we have support? Supported by Steve. Any comments, questions on the minutes? The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bixon,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 5, we have a series of public hearings scheduled for tonight. And I asked the manager, these have all been properly noticed in the media, and
Sir.
everyone, all property owners that are affected have been notified.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. The first one, A, consideration of an ordinance amendment, special project approval standards, section 2115. Mr. Attorney.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Before you, for public hearing, is a proposed ordinance amendment to section 2115. This ordinance simply allows for a little flexibility around the special projects boundary. So section 2115 is the ordinance that provides for the special projects. The proposed ordinance inclusion would allow other non-residential or multiple family zone property adjacent to a special project overlay district to be considered as a special project, always still subject to city council approval upon the recommendation of the planning commission. You will recall that this we did have a bit of discussion on this a couple meetings ago. This is not meant to create the wild west of special projects, but to allow certain adjacent properties to be able to fall under the special projects overlay standards. The example that you've used often is the one parcel that the special projects boundary that Vidya she brought up on the map and is now circling with her cursor there. That actually split that parcel in half to the special project. So this would be a perfect example of how this would be applicable. So there was no requested changes from the March 6th meeting. So unless there's questions, the appropriate or the requested action would be to conduct the public hearing, and if planning commission wishes to move forward with it, then it would be to move the amendment to city council for further consideration and action. And this is, again, keep in mind that this is always a discretionary approval when it comes to special projects, both at the planning commission and ultimately with city council. So if city council or planning commission do not feel like a particular parcel that may be adjacent to the boundary would be appropriate for a special project that doesn't have to grant that approval. So with that, I see the video, it does have the map up there, and it's the dashed green line. So there's a lot of colors there, but she's put that up appropriately and is kind of going on the outline of it. So I'd leave it to Mr. Chairman at this point.
Okay, any questions for the attorney? All right, I'm going to upset the apple cart. I missed the last two meetings, so I missed the discussion. I want to direct everybody's attention back to the joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council. I believe that was held in December. And this was a serious topic at the time. And I recall leaving that meeting with the understanding from both the council and the Planning Commission that we would look to do special projects anywhere in the city. So this is a change. I'm caught a bit by this, and I don't know if I'm ready to proceed. I looked at length at the dash green lines. I don't know who came up with them or when, but I don't think they're inclusive enough. I also looked at other cities' ordinances. They often call these PUDs, or planned urban developments, where you have a right to collaborate with a developer and look at a piece of property and propose to do other things sort of under special agreement. David, you're familiar with these things. So I want to pull us back a little bit from proceeding with this until we think this through.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
So, with all due respect, I would rather have you vote no than have you stop the procedure, because we did talk about this last 2 times. That was a suggestion from Mr. Jackson at the meeting. Staff and in our discussions and in my 45 years of doing planning, I don't want, why Jeff said the Wild Wild West is we're putting this whole ordinance at risk, because if it was construed that we can just make up anything we want anytime, we have things in this town called RUDs, residential unit developments. They use those on the east side when they were doing some of the subdivisions. But the green lines have been there for 20 years. They're well thought out. There's certain parcels that they thought was appropriate. It covers a lot of the areas that have stresses on them for redevelopment. What we're worried about is, and rightly so, the folks at Solaronics, that is not on this map.
No.
And if anyhow they would construe that, or is the administration building, is not on this map on purpose. Never felt those needed to be special projects, needed to be appropriate zoning in those areas. So we did not want to have this ordinance be thrown out because the folks would say, oh, you're just doing this so you can control everything you want, do whatever you want.
I understand.
So that was why we talked about this, and we do recognize that. Mr. Jackson did say that, and other communities do have, the whole city is a special project, pretty much. But we chose not to go that route in the last couple of months for discussion.
A lot of things have changed in 20 years. How does one change the green lines? What if something comes up? What if East
Yep, so I can answer that.
Parkdale,
Yep.
what if something happens with those corporations out
That's an
there?
amendment to the master plan. So what we
Yeah.
would do is go through the process, which would take almost a year. And in this case, we have circumstances that we want to deal with, but not open the whole can of worms up. So truly, we could, anytime the planning commission wanted to start the discussion, or city council, or staff would want to bring a new potential boundary to this map, we would go through the master plan revision process formally, and that's how you do it.
Mr. Mayor, there are members of the commission who probably agree with me on this, and you're going to hear this again. So I just am concerned about shutting that door, and that was discussed in great detail at night. And there was a lot of vocal support for doing that, for having the ability always to say no, of course,
Right.
always to say no. But having the ability to do it without a year delay, perhaps a project comes up that's of great interest to us, and we're stalled. We can't proceed.
Right, to do that now would be the year delay.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to start over and go through the whole thing. We could have had the opportunity when we did the master plan.
Would we have done it then?
We would have if we thought it was appropriate. So I will say 2 things. We did talk about Solaronics, that potentially that would have been a line, and the ones on Albertson. But we had never talked about the school board meeting, but it did go through the public hearings, everybody here, and no one brought it up, so it never got changed. But that would have been the time to do it. But again, we could start that process again if we'd like. But in this case, that will stymie the one development that has to have this if we're gonna move forward. Again, not meaning it gets approved, but if the opportunity's not.
Which
even there.
development is that?
The Mosher Rewald elevator site.
Okay.
It cuts the project right in half.
I'm looking to the commissioners for input on this.
So what you're saying is, we're just doing a little thing where you would prefer to do the whole, or at least have that discussion.
To have the ability, again, with the approval of the planning commission and the city council, to look at any parcel where an idea comes along and we're not stymied, where we have to just flat out say no. I want to have the ability when these creative things come along to be able to say, it's possible. Let's sit down and talk, negotiate.
Mr. Chairman, so I recall our discussion at the joint meeting, and I think it kind of landed in anywhere in the city, with the exception of residential multifamily, as a kind of broadly accepted idea. And then we kind of had a couple discussions following that maybe evolved and refined down to what this is. I don't really remember exactly how it went precisely from anywhere with the exception of residential multifamily to this. I kind of think it got to a nice mature place. But I guess backing up and looking at it again is totally fine, if that's what we want to do. Some of the green lines, as I started studying myself, like you, sounds like you did.
They're hard to read on there, aren't they?
They're hard to read, and some of them I didn't remember, and like Mr. Banna said, they've been there a long time. I just didn't remember the one around the Great Oaks Apartments. I just don't remember that one, so it caught me a little bit off guard. The one thing maybe more pertinent to what my comments are regarding this is, I think there's a possibility for some confusion. So we reference in this revised language, the overlay district, and we call it district in this language, and it only appears on the land use in the master plan. It doesn't appear on the zoning map. So I think that could be a little bit of a point of confusion. And then here's where I think it could get to be even more muddy, is that if you're looking at the land use on the master plan using the.
Could you repeat again, please, Michael?
Sorry for the interruption there. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I see, asking a question?
No,
I
I'm not sure that was.
think it was a technical.
Oh, sorry.
So using the land use map and the new language on any overlay district, and they're outlined here, and adjacent property with the exception of non-residential or multifamily, let's pick any property downtown that's in the overlay district, can leapfrog, even cross down University, crossing University to the property at the administration building, which appears here as quasi-public or public quasi-public. And it doesn't say residential, but underlying district is residential. Someone like a developer could say, oh, I could go special project, special project, special project, all the way down to that property and think that acquiring that and every property in between would give me a special project eligibility. And in reality, if you're looking at the zoning map where overlay districts don't appear, it's underlining residential, so you would not be able to specifically. I just think it could be a little confusing to someone that's trying to work the system, so to speak.
So if I may, Mr. Gaff, good question, but I would say, it says adjacent to a parcel, so you couldn't keep going from red to blue to purple to get there. It would be adjacent to the property.
Well, so if I'm a developer, I'm going to pick one right downtown. That's in the.
Right.
It's in the district. I'm going to buy the one right next to it.
That's fine.
I'm going to call that special project.
And you could.
And then I'm going to buy the next one.
Well, no.
And the next one.
Well,
and
if you
the
kept
next one.
buying them, okay, if you start putting them together.
And that's what I'm saying, is that someone could work the system, or if they had this
Gaming
grand
the
plan,
system,
and said over the next 10 years, this is what I'm going to do, and in year 9, oops, I can't do it because of this little technicality. I know that would be silly for someone to try that, but all I'm saying is there's some possibility of confusion, that the overlays on the land use, not on the zoning
Yeah,
district.
and if I may, that's what threw a lot of people that we didn't catch some of these, because there's words in the zoning ordinance that says the only place they refer to special projects is in the future land use plan. It's not even an overlay district. It's just lines on a map which is confusing as heck, but, and now Vinnie and Jeff, if you would want to weigh in how you would correct that, but the way the ordinance is written now, the only way to amend it is to amend the ordinance words, and that only refers back to this map, not a zoning
Because it's only on the
classifications.
master plan, does it have
Correct.
weight? Does it have
It-
authority?
It does because of the way the ordinance is written. Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that?
Mr. Banner or Mr. Chairman, if I could add, I was going to say something like underlining district.
Yeah.
Just to, then that brings it back to the zoning map,
Yeah.
not the master plan map. And maybe there's more,
Yeah.
a better way to do it.
Jeff?
No, as I'm looking at the ordinance language, it says the city's adopted master plan as, as the special project. But you're right, when I have seen overlay districts in other communities, they do show up on the zoning map. I don't think it's inappropriate to have that on the zoning map. You can have a zoning map and you can say, have a designation in your legend for the overlay, special project overlay district. I think that would probably clear up some of the confusion.
What would the process be to put that on there?
Well, we're gonna be going
Draw on
through.
that zoning map.
Yeah, we're gonna be going through a lot of these zoning, changes anyway. So we could pick up the inclusion of the overlay district lines on the zoning map in one of these revisions to the zoning map, because we're going through all these zoning ordinances, so it's not like it's gonna be a new process. But I wouldn't think that would stall the current effort, because it still refers to, it's not a zoning map requirement at this point, but I think Vidya has probably something to include.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jeff. So currently, the zoning ordinance references the PICA or the potential intensity change area on the future land use plan map, which is in the master plan. But the Planning Commission is currently in the process of implementing the master plan. Once all the districts are in place, we will be adopting a zoning map amendment. At the time we adopt the zoning map amendment, we can put the PICA boundaries on the zoning map itself. It doesn't have to be limited just to the master plan, and that would eliminate the confusion. So somebody wouldn't have to go to the master plan to figure out which the special project district is. They can look at the zoning map. So at the end of our district's adoption, we will be doing a map amendment. We can always include these boundary lines on it as a part of the amendment process.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's, keep them going parallel.
Yeah. Video, why you?
Mr. Chair, if I could also address one of the comments that Commissioner Gasson made about the creep, the parcel creep, if we want to call it that. If there's a parcel under this proposed ordinance, if there's a parcel that's adjacent to special project that ends up getting special project, that adjacent parcel doesn't fall into the special project. It doesn't create a new boundary. So you wouldn't have yet another adjacent parcel that would now be adjacent. It is the line that it's adjacent to, not a parcel, if that makes sense.
So until the line was changed, that next parcel would not be eligible?
That's correct. Just the one adjacent to that.
Be like the elevator site.
So maybe the ordinance language can be clarified to say adjacent parcel to the boundary lines that currently exist,
Yeah.
Okay.
which would sort of nail it down only to the parcels immediately adjacent to what currently is on record, and would prevent the parcels from creeping, like Commissioner Gasson said.
Christian?
I would agree with that. I had an emotional tug of war because I struggle with the idea of moving it forward. We had a lot of discussions, but at the same time, I would much rather err on the side of a delay and make sure it's right in order to prevent a future issue coming up. So I hope this doesn't undo a substantial amount of work that we've done already, but for purposes of clarification and for purposes of making sure that we do everything we can possible to make it correct moving forward, I agree with what you're saying, Dennis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, any comment? Sorry to catch all of you off guard on this.
Could I ask, Mr. So
Yeah.
what would you'd have to direct staff to write a new ordinance, because this is our recommendation. So if you're asking us to come back and make the whole city a special project, that's a whole different request.
What about this line that causes difficulty with the elevator How can that be addressed?
This is the only way to do it. Or redo the whole master plan and change the lines.
Okay.
We tried a Scribner's error. We talked about something that Vidia was actually shocked when she looked at the drawing that they even did in 2014. And why would we cut a project like that? No one picked it up and caught it.
So how does this correct that error so that?
It would allow the line to be moved by the Planning Commission and City Council, because it's
So we can
adjacent.
move other lines now as well.
We could.
Adjacent to.
Adjacent.
It wouldn't move the line, it would,
Allow it.
that would now be a parcel adjacent to.
Correct.
Okay, and again, until the line's moved, the
Can't do that.
further parcels are not, they're not impacted by
Correct.
this.
So the line doesn't
Correct.
move, but property creep.
The property's allowed to proceed under special.
Right. The line didn't
project, but
move.
The line
Correct.
doesn't move.
We
But it's still-
expanded the,
Yeah, but it's not still adjacent to the line, which means you couldn't jump over a property.
Yeah.
That's a
You
stop.
couldn't add the next one. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I would not be in favor of making the whole city a special project, mainly because I just don't foresee a development coming in and redeveloping a large residential area. You know, you basically would have to displace dozens of families, if not more. So the likelihood of that happening, I think, is very minimal, if at all. So that would be one thing. In my mind, the only place that it might be appropriate to have special projects is wherever you have any commercial or industrial land.
And that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and even having said that, you know, let's use Park Davis as an example, that property, or it's now really Pfizer, but if somebody were to come in and say, hey, we're buying that property and we're going to redevelop it, I would think the planning to get something like that done would take years. You know, it's not going to happen in 6 months, it's probably not going to happen in a year.
It's how the whole east side was done, I think we're told. None of us were around then, but that was done under a similar, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I think that, you know, for something of that magnitude to come in and be developed,
But
they're
that
gonna
couldn't
have
be
to
done
go-
right now, because that's not in, it's not in the green boundary.
I'm unclear. How far north does the green boundary go?
Well, yeah, well, so those, no, that was not, no, to clarify that, they weren't special projects, it was RUDs, that's a whole separate zone.
It looks like it goes around the OPC. Am I seeing that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right,
It does.
The east side was not a special project, it was RUDs, which are a whole different thing. Under R5, you can do RUDs, residential unit development, so that's how they develop those.
You know, like Cedarbrook was a special project.
Correct.
And it's within the green boundary.
And then wouldn't the mechanism to change that be basically to rezone that property anyways? Rather than make everything a special project if you had something of that magnitude?
I'm not sure.
So to me, the whole, whether we're going to have special project for the whole city, that's a whole nother
That's a whole nother thing.
conversation. It seems like we're trying to do one little thing here. Is that what,
This was written to
do this one
solve
elevator
the
project?
elevator project.
Right.
Because of
And-
an error.
Is it possible to see the green boundary again one more time?
Can you zoom in, video maybe a little bit?
I will try zooming in some more. I know it's in a strange neon green light, but I'll try to move my cursor
Yeah.
along its edges so you can see. This is the Cedarbrook parcel, then we are coming down to this. Then we pick up the OPC parcel, then this was the possible Overbrook. And all these are contained. Then it moves to on the south side of the river, South Street, north and south sides of South Streets up to here, excluding the single-family subdivision. Now you go to the west side of Main Street, it picks this whole parcel, which was formerly, it's the cement batch plant, the cement batch plant site over here on the north and south of the trail. This is Riverfront Place, Tony Rendazzo's project. Then it picks up this whole section over here. And it picks up, this is Main Street. Main Street is not in the special projects. It picks up 2 blocks on either side of Main Street. And then it goes, if you move further up, it picks up on the corner, the special projects boundary over here, it picks up this parcel over here. It picks up this tiny section over here. parcels at the actual corner are not included in the special projects boundary. Then it takes up this whole section, which is multiple family residential.
Where is the elevator error? Can you point that out?
The elevator site is
That
right
little-
here.
You can see the line.
So the line divides the elevator site
it's that
into two,
triangle of
and
the
I honestly have no idea why it went that way. This is Royal Park, this is Sunrise. Sunrise was supposed to be out of it, so it had to pick up all of the elevator site, but for some reason it got cut into two.
Okay.
And this is the rewalled site, and this would be Blossom Mills. So all of this is within a special projects boundary.
You mean the fantasy of
Mr.
Blossom
Chairman?
Creek?
May I have a question
Yes.
to Mr. Banda?
Yeah.
You tried the Scrivener's error and it didn't work? The county wouldn't let you fix it?
It's just amend your master plan. That was the answer back.
From the equalization people. Okay. So
And we understood that, and that's how we knew that was probably gonna happen, but
Yeah.
because it's two master plans in a row that were wrong.
And so, Mr. Chairman, like I said, the conflict that I've got is, I appreciate this is probably not what it was supposed to be like. And I don't want to derail correcting this issue and having the applicant or the development get sidetracked for another several months. Is that?
I agree, and I'm going to withdraw my objection, and I think we have to move this forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything
We'll do it next time.
yeah.
And we will pick up the clarity, though, for Mr. Gass. That's a very good point. When we do the zoning classifications, we'll make sure this becomes
Yes.
clear on the zoning map, because you're right, you should not have to go to the master plan to figure out, so we can do that.
Could we please have Vidya finish the outline of the?
Oh,
Yes,
sure,
please.
yes, sorry,
Thanks.
sorry.
Yes. So once we go further up on North Main, this is the section along the northern boundary. It goes down a street and there is a small apartment complex and a large single-family home that multiple times went through conditional land use. If you remember, they got conditional land use to do a duplex, then went back to single-family home. So that is in the special projects boundary. I believe this was a new addition in the current version of the master plan. This was not within the special projects boundary in the old version of the master plan, to my recollection. Then when we come further down on Main Street, on the west side of Main Street, it picks up this whole parcel over here. This is where the Paint Creek Tavern, or what is now Cruise and Moors Paint Creek Tavern, that's located in this area. It picks up this whole corner section over here, all of Dr. Atala's properties, all of these. Then when you go further west, it picks up this whole section. My cursor is moving along it. It picks up this whole apartment, multiple family residential chunk. All of it is considered as a special projects boundary.
Nick, that's been
It
in
does
since
not
you've been
include the
here,
Solaronics.
so we don't know the logic of it.
Don't know, that was, that was back from the original master plan, so I don't know the logic of
Is
that.
Solaronics next to,
They are not,
Yes,
And not, it's not
they are not
adjacent
in the
either.
special projects boundary,
they're not
but are,
adjacent.
they're not?
No, it's on the other side of the trail.
Correct.
other side of the trail.
So they're not, that's not eligible.
Correct.
So, okay, moving right along. Jeff, quickly repeat what you want us to do here tonight.
Yes, certainly.
We have to
I
open the
think there
public
was
hearing.
consensus to include the words boundary line, and so I wrote a note saying that it would be adjacent to the special project overlay district boundary line. I think that was a consensus. That's an easy add, but if Planning Commission wishes to move forward with this, then it would be a motion to move this to City Council for consideration.
So first, we got to open the public
Jeff?
hearing.
Yeah, I was just
Oh.
gonna say, I'm sorry, a voice of clerk here, you
Yeah.
still need to have your
Thanks for
public
watching.
hearing.
The public hearing's open at 7:29, and I'm going to ask if anyone in the audience or anyone with us electronically has a comment about this proposed change. Anyone that has any comment for us? Seeing none and hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:30, and it'll be back to the commissioners for consideration of a motion.
I'll make a motion to the ordinance that the city attorney just read.
As amended by Jeff, or as, you're going to add some language?
Yes, I'm gonna have it so that the language reads, adjacent to the special project overlay district boundary line, so that to remove that confusion.
Moved by the mayor, supported by David Gasson. Any other discussion? The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the discussion, folks, appreciate it. 5B, consideration of an ordinance amendment to section 2807, dumpster and trash storage enclosures. Mr. Attorney.
Yes, thank you. Again, Planning Commission at its March 6th meeting discussed an ordinance amendment to section 2807, which is the section for the dumpster and trash storage enclosure requirements. Currently, the language requires the dumpster enclosure to be constructed of the same materials as the building they are serving. And so has been discussion to allow Planning Commission additional flexibility when it comes to materials. Sometimes different materials are appropriate, or sometimes properties don't come before Planning Commission, but the city still wants them to do a trash enclosure. So part of the discussion is to allow Planning Commission the flexibility in allowing other materials. For instance, right now, primarily they're masonry block, if that's the construction material of the building. But this would allow other materials, and the fire department serves as your code enforcement, and so there's a lot of discussions with other properties that don't have trash enclosures, and the goal of the city is to get all of them enclosed in one way or another. So what this also allows is the building official to approve alternate materials for properties that may not be coming before city council, or excuse me, before planning commission for site plan approval on anything, but would allow the building official to allow someone to erect the trash enclosure and with appropriate materials. So the goal is ultimately to allow to properly screen trash enclosures. This just gives the city more flexibility. The next step in the process is to conduct a public hearing, and if Planning Commission wishes to move forward with it, then it would be, the appropriate motion would be to move it to City Council for consideration. There were no changes by Planning Commission after the March 6th meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for the attorney? David?
I'm not sure it's for the attorney, maybe it's for discussion. A thought I had, maybe I should have brought it up in the 6th, but the idea that the building official can approve alternative material without coming back to the planning commission seems reasonable. The idea that they're going to construct something that is new to the site, whether it's the right material or wrong material, seems questionable to me. Whether it's in the right spot, the right size.
We're delegating too much authority.
We're delegating our role as planners or planning commissioners. I get the idea of alternative materials, but I don't get the idea of there's a new thing on the site. It could be, I know we have all these other guidelines, front yard, it can't be in the front yard setback, it can't be in the side yard setback, but it could be so close and ominous that it would be objectionable if we looked at it. And I'm not sure that same scrutiny will happen with one person that's really purview is the material, not location and size. And what if it's 3 dumpsters big versus 1 dumpster big?
So once it's been site plan approved, the administration would have the authority to pick it up from there and get it built properly.
I think so, but I think the language says,
That they have
aha,
the
I got a
authority.
good idea. Let me put up a trash enclosure, and the building official can say yes.
Jeff?
No, I could weigh in if I may.
Nick.
Mr. Chairman, so the process here is the building official can't sign off unless the planning signs off first. So I act as the administrator of this planning ordinance, so I have to approve a site plan because it's not a structure. It doesn't come here because it's not a structure, and we follow the same standards. Are you taking out required parking? Are you adjacent to a residence? So we would apply the same standard you would. Administratively, it just saves 90 days. And again, building can't just sign off. It's his approval, but we have to sign off. And engineering signs off too, to make sure if they're putting a pad, are they affecting any engineering situations also? So that's the way it works now. I'm not saying that's how the process we go through now. And it doesn't come here because it's not structured.
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Banda, in that scenario, let's say applicant comes in and says, hey, this is how I want to do it, you're the arbiter, you decide, and you say no. Is there an appellate process? Would it then come back to us for final say? Do we hold the final decision-making authority?
No, so actually, by law, the zoning board of appeals takes any administrative denial as part of their function. So they would appeal and say, I want to challenge the city's planning department's decision that goes to the zoning board.
So it wouldn't come to us if you gave it a thumbs down, it would go to zoning. So someone else would have another look at it. Okay.
The best case, though, is that it
Could I
comes.
step in and clarify that?
Yeah.
Because what Mr. Banda is referring to is a decision by the building official that's an appeal. However, if a property owner wished to have a site plan review that would include what they want to do for a dumpster site, the enclosure, they could certainly come before planning commission for site plan review. This is what Mr. Banner is referring to is if they're not otherwise going before planning commission for site plan. This is just, they don't have a current enclosure now. And so instead of requiring them to come to planning commission just to get a trash enclosure, the building official would be too. So there's really two different ways they could, I guess, appeal a decision. But it's kind of hard to appeal a discretionary act, if you will. It's not like an interpretation, but I suppose they could appeal that to the zoning.
So one example right now is the Spartan Hotel, which has a dumpster with no enclosure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead, Chief.
Where this really has come from, and I don't know what has gone on over many years, but you'll find that the majority of our dumpsters are not within enclosures. For whatever reason, they weren't built. And so what this is requesting is some latitude when we have a complaint or we have an issue with a trash area that's already been identified and been in operation for multiple years, to where we now say you need to put a fence around it in accordance with the city code. The city code requires it to be brick and mortar. And so that's where we get pushback, is from the expense of now building these enclosures around the dumpsters that have been on the site for multiple years. So I guess the consideration, and the reason why I've asked for this potential change to be considered by you and council, is to add some latitude for us to be able to get these eyesores that are these trash dumpsters that are visible from the streets and that are pre-existing, to try to help and start cleaning up the site so that we don't have trash being blown around or other material outside of the dumpster enclosure.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, literally 14 years ago, I'm coming into town to talk to Mr. Vitrano, and at the time Mayor Cuthbertson. I came down the hill where the collision shop is, saw a dumpster sit in front of the building, and I thought, from where I came from.
I could start there.
Yeah, I thought, and knowing Mr. Johnson, the city manager, was such a snickerer and stuff like that, we must have counted 50 of them that were never screened, and they've been grandfathered in since the 50s, maybe, I don't know, and that's been on my personal mission with the chief, that we're gonna get them one at a time. So I can't tell you how many we've located with an administrative site plan, making sure that we didn't lose any parking, we didn't lose any landscaping, and then clean them up. To the fact that they're supposed to have 3 bollards on the inside, so when you go in, it doesn't take out the structure because these drivers can't do it right, so.
And we're clearly not trying to have any control over new sites or changes to the sites that clearly fall within the preview of the planning commission and city council. We're only looking to go ahead and have the ability to fix the pre-existing dumpster areas that have been identified and in service for multiple years.
So Jeff, is that sufficient? Do we have sufficient legal authority to administratively delegate that to the enforcing officer?
I believe so, because it's not normally just a fence, would not necessarily be a site plan review trigger. So this is, if someone has to come before planning commission with site plan review, then that is purely in your court and not the building official. That wouldn't trigger this. This is truly somebody the city is trying to get to put one up that isn't otherwise looking for a site plan approval for anything.
And if they refuse, they can be issued a violation?
Well, that's a great question. With us putting this in there, it allows the flexibility, but it doesn't have the requirement. I mean, it would have to be a case by case to see if they built it or if the condition is contrary to the approved site plan. I mean, that would certainly be an ordinance violation. But if it's somebody who didn't have one otherwise required, this doesn't require a fence. This just adds the type of material and who can approve the fence material, the enclosure.
David?
So I better understand, I'm getting a little more information. So right now, if someone said, I want to put up a compliant enclosure, masonry structure, I'm calling it structure, you can approve that without coming to the planning commission. Okay, then my issue's solved.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Rich?
Yeah, just as a clarification, who is the building official that's referenced in this ordinance? Is it the
No,
code
it's Randy
enforcement?
McClure.
Okay.
So he's our registered
The
building
inspector.
official, correct.
Okay.
He's a building inspector and a building official.
Okay. Chris?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a
No, you're not.
troublemaker. This isn't retroactively applied, correct? Because you can't you can't put the law in and say, okay, now you gotta change it, correct? Is this for new properties, is that right?
No.
No,
Well-
this is to go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so fire chief is still going to be able to go to property owner X and say, hey, listen, we want you to put up this enclosure, the ordinance requires it, but the building official has allowed alternative materials to allow you to do it in a more economical fashion or more appropriate fashion. So this wouldn't trigger by itself a new ordinance requirement. It's already, whoever it applies to now, it applies to tomorrow.
Okay.
This just allows someone to approve the material, that's all.
Right, and I can tell you that the chief and I, if we go out there and they argue, I'm not conforming, so we'll pull out Google Earth Maps and say, that had to be in that exact same spot for 10 years for you to say it never moved. They never are.
Okay.
So then we make a deal with them and say.
I got
just
you,
give them
okay, I wanted to make
And
sure.
we use kind of a trip point, in all honesty, is when we go by and are doing our blight inspections, if we see trash around the dumpster enclosure, we see couches or whatever else that are there that are really an eyesore, we tell them to clean the area up, and if we see it again, then we'll be talking to them about the enclosure. And their comment is typically, well, we do something, but holy smokes, I gotta put in foundation and brick and all of
Right.
these things. And in all honesty, when, we haven't had big problems from the property owners when we brought it to their attention for them to try to comply. They're looking for this option of doing things without that type of enclosure.
So it's not your intention to canvass the city looking for all unenclosed garbage dumpsters?
No, sir.
That would be a full-time job for a while.
Yeah.
But it's not your intent to do that?
That's not, the intention is to turn up the politeness on the properties that are.
The ones that are a problem?
Correct.
Correct.
And we're just looking for some potential relief for the property owners from the requirement to have to make it brick and mortar.
Okay, this item is scheduled for a public hearing, and we'll call it 7:44. I'll open the public hearing. Ask if anyone in the audience or connected with us electronically has any comment on this item. Yes, sir. Please come forward, if you would. I'm sorry to bother you. You have to come over to the microphone. Thank you. We have to get you on tape.
Oh, okay. Oh, I live in Great Oaks.
Your name, please.
Does this?
Your name, please.
Will Kortrijk.
I will.
Does this include then all commercial property, or does it include apartments or residential? We have problems with not dumpsters, but our trash cans, they don't fit in garages.
Nick,
So
Nick,
can
could
this
you,
be then enclosed, or is this included?
go ahead.
If, it would be a traditional dumpster, not the cans, because the cans are, we don't call those dumpsters per se. But it is commercial, it is apartments, and actually, the apartments have been some of our bigger violars. Forest Ridge, for example, but when the new owners bought it, they wanted to put structures and gates so that stop people from throwing couches and things like the chief said. But this would be all commercial and residential, but not single-family residential, unless someone had there are no dumpsters in people's backyards that are in single-family, so, but it would be apartments also.
But I have apartments behind me, and their dumpsters are not enclosed at all.
Great Oaks is enclosed all of their.
They have, Great Oaks has, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Okay, the public hearing remains open. Any other comments from anyone on this item? Okay, hearing none we'll call it 7:46. We'll close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the table for the commissioners. What we need is a motion to approve this ordinance and forward it on to the city council.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lohr. Do we have support?
Support.
Supported by Kristen. Any other discussion? Could we have the roll call, please?
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bixson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 5C, Brown Iron, 265 East Second Street. Site plan, special exception for parking in lieu of. This was scheduled for a public hearing as well. And Vidya, I think this one's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just. Thank you. The site plan is up on your screen. So we've reviewed a proposal to establish a brewery with a restaurant and a bar in an existing building. You're familiar with the site. It's at the northwest corner of East 2nd Street and Water Street, and the existing building is significantly non-conforming with respect to the front yard setback along Water Street. As regard to the use, the I-1 district does not expressly permit restaurants or breweries. However, the section of the ordinance related to I-1 states that a business establishment permissible in the B1 general district that is found to be of significant convenience to the employees and firms in the I-1 district, such as a credit union, a restaurant, or a filling station, shall be permitted in the I-1 district as a special exception use. Now, a brewery is also considered as a manufacturing and processing facility, and the I-1 district also happens to be where the Rochester Mills restaurant is located, diagonally across, just across Water Street from this site. So we believe the use is permitted as a special exception in this district. The applicant appeared before the Planning Commission for a preliminary hearing on March 6th and was scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. Now, the required setbacks in the I-1 district are 25 feet for the front yard, 40 feet for the rear yard, and 20 feet for the side yard. And as you can see on this is the front yard setback line that actually cuts a good portion of the northwest corner of the building, making it non-conforming. But no changes to the actual footprint of the building itself are proposed. So this is an existing non-conforming structure that can remain as is. In previous discussions with the applicant, we had concerns about a structure that is shown on the site plan as a proposed smoker. As it is used for smoking meat, as it was proposed to us originally, it appeared like it was going to be a building addition, but once the applicant submitted more details, an actual image of what the smoker looks like, it is more in line with being a mechanical equipment, and so it is fine to be located in the side yard as shown on the site plan. With regard to access and circulation, that was the biggest challenge of the site. It has got two access drives. This access drive off East 2nd Street leads to a parking lot that has non-conforming aisle width but is functional for as long as it has been here. The bigger challenge is the fact that the entire frontage along Water Street currently is a huge concrete expanse. There is an existing dumpster enclosure here. The applicant has turned in truck turning diagrams, and there is no way for this to be accessed by a trash hauler truck without using the public right-of-way to make the turn movements. At the last Planning Commission meeting, this was discussed with the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission did not have any issues with the dumpster continuing to be located where it presently is, because there's simply no other place on the site where this can be moved without either causing loss of parking or affecting circulation otherwise on the site. As regards to pedestrian circulation, there is an existing 5-foot wide sidewalk along the site's East 2nd Street frontage. During preliminary discussions with the owner, I spoke about trying to do something. The farmers market lot is immediately to the north of the site. I spoke about providing some kind of continuity in the sidewalk to make it more walkable. And the applicant, currently, there is no projection of this island as you see on the site plan. So the applicant is actually extending and creating this landscape island and extending the sidewalk all the way till this edge and providing a crosswalk connection, thereby completing the pedestrian loop along Water Street frontage, which currently does not exist.
Could you point that out for us? We can't see that, I don't think.
Yes. Are you able to see it now? It's this section. So the farmers market lot is up in the north here.
Yes.
There is an existing sidewalk that stops here. There is going to be a ramp, and I'm sorry, the AutoCAD sheets that are submitted by the architect actually has this yellow box popping up. I have no way of disengaging it. So they are going to stripe a crosswalk across the entire frontage. There's going to be another barrier-free accessible ramp, and this is going to be a new section of sidewalk that will connect to the existing sidewalk that currently stops here.
Okay, thank you.
So the sidewalk loop will actually be completed, providing more pedestrian connectivity along Water Street. So based upon the ordinance standards, the site requires a total of 27 parking spaces. The site provides a total of 23 parking spaces, which is a shortfall of 4 spaces. For some reason, the site plan over here notes that the applicant is seeking special exception approval in lieu of 1 parking space. They actually need to pay for 4, not 1 parking space. So that is a correction I have made. So Planning Commission approval of payment in lieu of parking is for 4 spaces, not 1. The ordinance also exempts outdoor dining areas from providing additional parking if the seating capacity is less than 25% of the seating capacity of the interior restaurant itself. Now, the capacity of the restaurant inside is 99 persons, so the maximum occupancy of the outdoor patio is limited to 24 persons only. As the applicant explained to me, the patio is a lot larger in size, so that in the event, if in the future we encounter a situation such as the pandemic that we previously had, where interior dining for some reason has to be restricted, there is ample space to provide outdoor dining. At this point of time, however, the applicant is going to have no more than 24 persons seated in the outdoor dining area, and the rest of the area will be used for recreation, such as a fire pit, cornhole toss, and just for people to hang out over there, not necessarily dine or be served with food. The police chief, in his review of this proposal, expressed a little bit concerned that between the interior and the outdoor seating capacity, it's got a total capacity for the site is 123 persons. The site has only 23 parking spaces. We had previously asked the applicant to clarify if any shared parking agreement can be executed with the city's farmers market site or any of the abutting sites on the same side of the street within a 300-foot distance that would allow them to share parking spaces during non-overlapping hours of usage. And the applicant had responded that they will address this question at the Planning Commission meeting. So I'm hoping the applicant will answer that for you tonight. As I previously mentioned, the dumpster enclosure is located right on Water Street, and new gates are being proposed in order to screen it. There are existing gates, but the existing gates are made of wood and they are in a state of disrepair. Our recommendation is that the applicant use the newer vinyl or Trex decking type of material for the gates, because that is a lot more durable and that will blend in better with the building and not look obvious, even though the dumpster is right on the street frontage itself. With regard to the facade elevations, the applicant has submitted a rendering that I will put up on the screen at this time. Building materials are pretty much going to be kept the same, and the colors are also going to be maintained in shades of beige and, oh, I think I scrolled a bit too much. If you would just give me a second. Yes. So it's still going to be continuing in shades of brown and beige itself, and the roof is going to be a much darker color. The overall architecture that the applicant is proposing lends itself to the brew house use of the site. As you can see, the outdoor dining with its split rail style fence and the fire pit and the umbrellas actually adds to the overall look of the building. Typical details of all of the outdoor patio fixtures have been provided, and they're all acceptable. With regard to lighting, the building has numerous existing wall-mounted light fixtures. The applicant has submitted a photograph of the existing fixture. The fixtures all have adjustable heads, so the fixtures can be directed. If you look at current Google images, the fixtures are facing outward and upward and are not necessarily shielded, but all the applicant would have to do is angle the fixture downward and it will meet the ordinance requirement. The site also has light poles on the other side of East 2nd Street along the site's frontage, and on the other side is on the east side too on Water Street with Farmers Market to the north, which is pretty well illuminated. The site should have more than adequate illumination for safety. With regard to landscape plan, I will go to the sheet that shows the landscape plan. The applicant is proposing some decorative landscaping along the site's frontage. It's going to have numerous shrubs, perennial flowering shrubs, ornamental grasses, and it's going to overall enhance the appearance of the outdoor dining area as you saw in the rendering itself. The applicant is also planning to plant a bunch of lilac bushes along the street corner, but they will be kept outside the clear vision triangle so as not to impede vision. The remaining portions of the site will be provided with lawn area. If you have visited the site, you do know that I think the landscape plan is further down. I've gone too far. So the landscape, if you're familiar with the site, if you look at the landscape plan, they do have an elevation difference between them and Huntington Bank that is to their west. There is a series of evergreen trees and shrubs along the west property line, which the applicant intends to maintain as is. With regard to signage, there is an existing sign along the site's frontage for the current animal hospital use that is occupying the site. The applicant proposes to resurface and use the same sign. A new wall sign is going to be mounted on the facade facing East 2nd Street and must be submitted to administration for review in terms of the maximum permitted size prior to installation. The site plan also includes a note stating that there will be some music provided to the outdoor patio area only for ambient atmosphere to create. The site is not immediately adjacent to any single family or other residential use. So as long as it complies with the noise ordinance, there should not be an issue. We have worked with the applicant on this for several months, and the reason it took a while for the applicant to come before the Planning Commission was because of trying to resolve some property line issues with Oakland County Assessing Department. So at this time, it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval and special exception approval for proposed brown iron brew house to be located at 265 East 2nd Street, subject to 4 conditions. That would be payment in lieu of 4 parking spaces, addressing the issue of shared parking to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission, replacement of the existing dumpster gates with either new wood or vinyl gates to match the building, and finally, approval of all signage by the city's administration prior to installation. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the commissioners for the planner? So Vidya, is it fair to say that we don't know how old this building is, but it could not be built where it is today, strictly because of setbacks?
Yes, the building is too large for a site of this size, and it doesn't have nearly enough room for parking or the aisles based on today's standards. So this is an existing nonconformity.
And no variances were given back when it was built, it was just approved. Got it. Is the applicant present?
Question, yeah.
I do have a question for the planner. I see on here there's one handicap parking spot. Is that all that's required?
Yes, when you have a parking lot under 25 parking spaces, you're required to provide only one handicap accessible space. So they are provided only one.
Okay. Now I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward. Good evening.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you. My name is Patty Eisenbraun. I am the primary owner of Brown Iron Brew House. I own 75% of it. I have a chef partner, Denny Smiljanowski, and he owns the remaining 25%. I'm married. I'm married 30 years, actually, this month. And my husband, Tim, he's my CFO. The Liquor Commission didn't want both my husband and myself owning the property, where we are in Rochester, or in Washington Township, but we have a location in Washington. And the reason is because of just licensing issues, nothing with my husband at all. So he's a good guy. He's an army veteran. We've been together, like I said, we've been married 30 years.
You drew straws and you lost.
Yeah, so kind of, but no, I really do love what I do. Brown Iron, we have a location in Washington Township that started in 2015. And then we have a second location that is still very successful, but had the unfortunate timing of opening March 1st of 2020 in Royal Oak on the Beaumont campus there at 13 and Woodward. But we're still very successful. Regardless of the conditions, we never received any government assistance because of the timing. We didn't get PPP, EIDL, RRF, anything like that. So to be standing here in front of you, expanding my business without getting government assistance throughout the pandemic, I'm really proud of that, because a lot of restaurants, even that did receive aid, didn't survive. It was horrible and traumatic. So I'm really proud to say that I'm standing here in front of you with our next location that we propose in Rochester. The concept is, if you haven't been to Brown Iron, we're a smokehouse. We brew our own beer, as well as we carry other people's beer. We've been named Best Craft Beer Bar in the state since 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20. They stopped the designation in 2020. The Brewers Association, which is what all brewers belong to, they stopped that since COVID. 2017, we were named one of the top 50 companies in Michigan by the state of Michigan. In 2017, we're also named number 4 in the nation for best craft beer bars in the state. In the U.S. by USA Today. And then in this past fall, I received an award as being an Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of Michigan. So I really do love being an entrepreneur. Incidentally, I've been volunteering time on the PSD board as well for the last probably 4 or 5 years here as well. I really love this city. Went to Woodward, went to Van Hoosen, went to Adams, class of '86. So
welcome home.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying for a long time to find the right property that fit both the industrial and also the restaurant operations. As much as I'd like to be on Main Street, I knew that really wasn't what you wanted on Main Street, as far as having some sort of industrial as well as a restaurant. So I've been really careful about trying to find the right property, and this one became available. But Brown Iron, we're a scratch-made kitchen. We specialize in gluten-free, and anybody who is got any kind of allergy concerns, those are our people. We just love it. We've had about 1.4 million people at Washington Township with 0 police incidents. And then Royal Oak, we've had probably, it's really hard to estimate the numbers, but we've probably had about 250,000 customers since we opened in Royal Oak with no incidents with our customers. There's been a few homeless issues, but
No unruly doctors or nurses or?
No. Unfortunately, the doctors and nurses, they're working long shifts. They're just not coming out like they used to. So, we'll hopefully that'll change as things get more and more away from the pandemic. So.
Any questions for the petitioner? The planner outlined 4 conditions. The most important one is apparently your documents say 1 space in lieu of, parking in lieu of, and it's actually required that there's four, and I want to make sure you
I do
understand that.
I do understand this. This is my third property that I've purchased in Rochester. I used to own 234 South Main, which was the Detroit Edison building. We were the first owners. After Detroit Edison, I had an appraisal company there, and then sold it. And then I still currently own the little white house on the corner of on the corner of 3rd Street, like across from the farmer's market. So that's Brown Aaron's offices. And so there's 4 parking spaces there that I plan that my managers will be parking at. But I also know that, believe me, I have no problem paying I believe it's $1,000 in lieu of parking.
And you understand that it's 4
Yes,
spaces
4
that you have
spaces.
to.
There was a little question for us and my architect as far as the requirements, because there's some industrial and some restaurant. So, but $4,000 is probably going to be my least cost of anything, so.
Then how about the shared parking with the city? Have you pursued that at all?
I've talked to Nick quite often about this, and do you want me to speak for you or you?
I can have, so our ordinance requires what it does. And I appreciate the police chief's comments about 26 spaces, you could have 99 people. We want people in our paid lot. That's right up the sidewalk at the top of the hill. So we are fine with the pay in lieu of, the parking's there available. There's some places in town, people are talking about getting pay in lieu of, and there isn't a parking lot within a half a mile. So we take it seriously.
This works out very well.
This worked out very well, and we're fine with it, and, yes, absolutely.
Is there stairs between this parcel and the parking lot?
There is, but,
No. Well, there's stairs between us, I'm
the
sorry.
farmer's market lot.
Us and Farmer's Market,
Yeah.
but there's us, then going west, there's Huntington Bank, and then there's your public parking lots again.
Right.
Like between us and, like Chomp.
But access between this parcel and the elevated lot, how does that?
Right, so right now, it's there, but we are working on a plan to do the Town Square project. If that went through, there's a good likelihood that we would take out that staircase. But again, that wouldn't matter, because that's not the parking that we're talking about. We're talking about up the street towards the alley. They would just walk down the street.
Past Huntington.
Right.
Okay.
Because the free lot, the farmer's market lot, all the time's booked up. So to think that that's good parking, even though it's adjacent to it, it's usually full because it's free. So up the street, adjacent to Huntington, correct, is our.
There's
parking.
sidewalks connecting.
That is correct.
The stairway is adequate, safe.
Correct.
Okay.
Is the bank open on Saturday and Sunday?
Now, I would,
And so to give you an idea, Brown Aaron, I don't consider myself a bar. Most of our customers, it's a family restaurant, really. And that people, my age or so that still wanna go out and have like a nice meal and maybe try a bunch of different types of beer, craft beer. So, our hours are currently 11 in the morning till 11 at night. We're not a place that you stay until 2 in the morning. But I do, at some point, I can approach Huntington, but to get to the right person with Huntington is really difficult. Their branch managers, even those that Huntington is our bank, those branch managers right now, they're on this cycle, they're turning them, and so.
They don't have the authority.
They don't have the authority to even connect me to the right person.
Okay. You're working on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good enough?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Vivian.
Typically, banks, I know Patty said she's speaking to Huntington, but typically, in my experience, banks will not allow other businesses to use their parking lot, even during their non-usable hours of operation, simply because they still have ATM machines and all that are accessible. It was told to me that it is for liability issues, so banks typically never sign on for shared parking. So public parking is a better bet.
Okay. Any other questions for this applicant? This is scheduled for a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing at, what do we have? 8:09, we'll call it. And I'll ask if anyone in the audience or anyone connected to us electronically has any comments about this project. Anyone have any comments about the proposed Brown Iron Brewery project? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll call it 8:10. And back to the commissioners for consideration. So what we'd be looking for here is send this on to the city council And
Straight site plan approval and then special exception
this-
approval.
so
Just doesn't
two-
fall, yeah, they don't have the right to go to ask for a payment plan at city council because it's under 10 spaces. So this would be the final act tonight.
Okay. So, should we do it in two? So the first will be 4 spaces payment in lieu of. Does anyone want to make a motion to that effect?
Motion.
So David makes a motion.
Support.
Supported by Steve. Any other discussion on the issue of 4 parking spaces paying payment in lieu of? The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Okay, then the second item would be consideration for approval as a special project, site plan approval. A special
Site plan and
project,
special exception.
special exception for a brewery in an industrial district.
So moved. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
before
sir.
motion, I'm sorry. I have a few
David.
comments I'd just like to put on the record to
Yes.
get into the plan as a final. The handicap parking spot, as it's indicated by symbol, I think is not in the correct place in terms of how it might have been planned. I think it's on the opposite side of the hatched area, if it were up on the screen, based on where the sign is, that's one thing. And then also, in the rendering and also on the plan, it doesn't indicate a ramp to get from that space up to the elevated walk to get into the building. And I know you plan to do it, I think it just needs to be on the plan.
Would you make that a condition of any motion then?
Yes, that'd be a way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so restate the motion if you would, David, that would be,
Wait, we've got,
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, Sal Lorenzano from Design House Architecture, that sidewalk is actually at grade right now, so there's not a curb to go up there.
at grade with the asphalt.
Correct.
But my comment was in reference to your rendering. Looking at your rendering, there is a curb and there's wheel stops, which
Gotcha.
kind of contradict themselves, but,
Yeah.
so there is no need for a ramp. Do you agree that the symbol should be on the other side of the hatch?
I would agree.
Okay.
Lydia, would you put that
Not
up,
that that matters,
please?
you'd hopefully do it right. That's what caught my eye. It looks like a curb, but
Lydia, could you put that drawing back up again?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe Commissioner Gasson was referring to this rendering where it
I
looked
see.
like it is actually a curb when it's supposed to be at grade.
So the motion will include that it'll be built according to ordinance.
perfect.
Okay. So who made that motion?
Richard,
Rich made the motion. Who supported it?
I'll support.
Okay, David supports it. Any other discussion on this motion? The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Patty, wherever you went, welcome to town, and we're proud you chose us. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay, this will be number 5D, Bitter Tom's, 329 South Main. Special exception for parking in lieu of.
I've got that one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Tom Bosley, owner of Bitter Tom's in Lake Orion, is a distillery in Lake Orion. I think that's where they make the spirits. Tom came in and we found a space downtown, which was in the former Antiques by Pamela. Pamela decided to retire. She's actually moved in the back of a store, still doing appraisals and stuff, so she's still in town. I just saw her the other Friday night, actually. But the owner of the property had sent tenants to come in, and Mr. Bosley is a Rochester resident. He builds many homes in town with his partner, and he came in and thought, he went to the state and looked to get a tasting room license, so not a Class C. So he's not gonna make the spirits there, it's simply a tasting room. And we had one of those in the Cheese Lady, if anybody's been in there, where they had, for a while, it was Chateau Chantel from up north, the wine, so, so Tom is looking to do that. So when you calculate the grandfathered parking in from my parking chart of retail to go to, we'll have to call this a restaurant with liquor, even though.
So it's beer, wine, and spirit?
No, I think it's just spirits. So it's a spirit tasting room, so.
No beer or wine?
Correct. So, that was a difference of 4 spaces. So in order for him to be able to get a building permit, you would have to have this body, permit them to purchase 4 parking spaces in lieu of, and we would be even, and so staff is in favor of that, option, and we're looking forward to a diversification again of our events with the Roxy coming into town. Thought this was off, it was off. With Roxy coming into town, they talk about, they want people to leave there and go have an after-dinner drink, whatever. And so we think this is a good addition to diversifying our base, and they'll be opening in the evenings, which is another good thing for town. So we are.
No
in support of
food
this.
served, or?
I think it's snacks, just some little pre-prepared snacks, but there's not a kitchen in this facility.
Okay. Questions for the manager? Is the applicant present? Good evening.
No, I just got back. I hope I said it right.
The only thing, Tom Bosley.
Hi, Tom.
Later, Tom. How you doing? The only thing I would correct is we actually have a facility for manufacturing in Rochester Hills. So our facility in Lake Orion is a full-service restaurant.
Where's your manufacturing facility?
Across from Walmart in the industrial complex over there.
Okay.
Very
Very good.
Waterview.
Any questions for Mr. Bosley? Okay, this item is scheduled for a public hearing, and we will open the public hearing at 8:15. And I'll ask if anyone present in the room or connected to us electronically has any comments about the Bitter Tom's tasting room. The issue is approving special exception for parking. How many spaces, Nick? 4 spaces, payment in lieu of. And I don't see any hands or hear any comments, so we'll close the public hearing at 8:16. Back to the commissioners for consideration. So this ends also with the planning commission. It doesn't go on to city council. So we're looking for a motion to approve 4 spaces, payment in lieu of, for this project. Moved by Mr. Lower. Yep. There's support.
Support.
Support by Ms. King. Any other discussion on this motion? Roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bixson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kendrick,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Welcome to town, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
When are you going to open, you think, Tom?
In about an hour.
I just got the first copy of the lease today, actually, so hopefully we can get that done. I'll meet with the building department with Randy, try to get that expedited, and hopefully, it's a small space, so we're hoping, since I'm a general contractor, I can get this thing banged out in 3 months and get open in July.
Great, very good.
So that's the goal.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, item 5E, the Downtown Inn, formerly known as the Spartan Hotel, 1100 North Main Street, site plan elevation modification. Video.
Is video muted?
Lydia, did you crash?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. My apologies.
There you go.
So the petition before you is from Mr. Peter Kalach to renovate an existing building on Main Street. You're all familiar with it as the Spartan Inn, and the use is to be continued as is. The applicant is just making certain changes and improvements to the site. To our knowledge, I'm not sure when the Spartan Inn was originally approved or if there is any formal record of site plan approval for the site ever. So this process is necessary in order to officially get something on the record. Overnight lodging facilities are permitted in the B1 district, which is what the site is zoned. It is permitted as a special exception. Since the use is not changing, new special exception approval is not required, just site plan approval. The applicant appeared for preliminary hearing on March 6th and was scheduled for a public hearing tonight. With regard to access and circulation, it has frontage both onto Main Street and also onto Terry Avenue to the south. There is an existing circular driveway up in front, which is intended to be used as is. We had previously also noted that the edges of this circular drive are defined with bumper blocks right now. Some of those bumper blocks are in a state of disrepair and they must be replaced in order to make sure that the site is cleaned up. For the rest of the circulation, it is a one-way movement route from the north side of the site down through the rear of the building onto Terry Lane. So that is the pattern of circulation that currently exists and is proposed to be retained. With regard to pedestrian circulation, there is an existing sidewalk along the Main Street frontage. At the last meeting, there was significant discussion regarding pedestrian connectivity to the single-family residential district to the east. All of these are single-family homes to the east. And the applicant had stated that it is not possible to put in any sidewalks since the entire expanse along Perry Avenue is fully paved and has currently got existing parking spaces. The applicant is correct in that the entire area is paved. However, if you look at the image that I attached in my review letter, there is in fact a sidewalk that goes entirely across this width of the property. The parking spaces on the site stop just shy of the sidewalk itself. So technically there is a sidewalk that runs along this entire area, along the frontage, and connects to the neighborhood to the east. It's just that it happens to continue with the site's on-site pavement and parking, so the applicant assumed there wasn't one. As regards to parking, the parking requirement for the subject site is 1 space per guest room plus spaces for any accessory uses such as bars, dining rooms, meeting rooms, etc. This is my third review of the proposal and I still do not have parking calculations. It just says what is there on the site. It does not give me parking calculations. So I attempted to figure out what the parking might be for the site by counting out the rooms on the floor plan. However, the floor plan is not labeled, so I'm not sure if I counted some areas that I use for storing linens as actual rooms. But based upon a cursory look at how it is, there are a total of 41 guest units and a lobby office area. And the site has a total of 40 regular and 2 handicap accessible spaces, which I assume would meet the requirement. But I do want to clarify, parking calculations are based on my counting of what I assumed were rooms on the floor plan because nothing is labeled. The existing parking along Terry Lane does not comply with the ordinance, which requires a 10-foot setback for all parking along a residential zoning along the same block, but this is an existing non-conformity that is not being altered. With regard to dumpster, the applicant is planning a new masonry enclosure on the northeast corner of the site to be provided with vinyl gates. The ordinance also requires a screen wall between the subject site and the adjacent single-family residential to the east. There is currently an existing fence along this property line that is in a state of disrepair, and the applicant had presented at the last meeting and has noted it on the revised plan that there will be a new vinyl fence installed along this property line in order to provide the ordinance, meet the ordinance's requirements. The height of the fence is not noted, but the ordinance allows for a maximum height not to exceed 8 feet. So the wall or the fence needs to be within the 8 feet. With regard to the actual facade, I will, this is the existing Spartan Inn building. This is the fence that I was mentioning, which is going to be replaced with a new vinyl fence. This is the floor plan that I mentioned. I counted these rooms off in order to determine what the parking was. I wasn't sure if this is actually a linen closet or something, so I skipped it, but maybe the applicant can clarify that. This is the proposed facade for the building itself. The applicant is proposing new limestone tile, and there is going to be standing seam metal awnings up here and a new horizontal metal panel. The proposed building material colors are in shades of gray and black to create a more modern appearance. If you look at the south elevation facade, the applicant is proposing to keep the existing stucco over here, and there are existing poles, metal poles that support. I can zoom into the actual existing facade. These are the existing poles, metal support poles. The applicant is proposing to provide a base of brick and limestone for those poles. Over here, there is going to be new limestone tile base with a limestone sill, and the poles are going to be painted black. I had previously suggested that maybe the poles could be encased in additional brick or something to elevate the look of the building. However, the Planning Commission at the last meeting did not offer any feedback on this matter. So I have left the elevations by the applicant as presented since the Planning Commission did not ask for any changes at the last meeting. With regard to lighting, the elevations are showing new gooseneck style light fixtures in the front, basically to illuminate their sign, which is attractive. The sides of the buildings actually already have ceiling lights on the corridors, and they also have wall mount fixtures. I have attached pictures of the existing fixtures in my review letter. As you can see, the fixtures that are attached to the wall itself along the side elevations. This is where the existing fixtures are on the side. They are not shielded. So either the applicant can add a shield or replace those with new wall mounted fixtures so that they are screened. It is pretty important because this facade continues with the single family residential development to the east. So lighting and light pollution is something the Planning Commission has dealt with for the past year or so. So I would suggest that either those wall pack fixtures be replaced or shields be added. With regard to landscaping, a row of boxwoods and evergreen ground cover and seasonal flowers are being proposed along the frontage of the site. I will zoom down to the actual facade. If you can see, this is the applicant's representation of the landscaping. These are seasonal grasses and there are some boxwoods. I continue with my recommendation that the facade is so elongated, a couple of ornamental trees such as cherry blossom or a little leaf linden would go a long ways in enhancing the appearance of the site on Main Street. So I've continued to recommend that at least 2 trees be added. The applicant has more than enough room to do that in their front landscape area, which will make their building look much more attractive. The signage needs to be submitted to administration for review prior to installation. So the existing building and the improvements on the site have remained for a really long time, and there are several nonconformities on the site. Now, the whole point of site plan approval is not to keep sites that have been 40, 50 years the same way. Sites are non-conforming and they are likely going to be non-conforming. The goal of site plan approval is to try to bring them as much into compliance to code as is feasible. And that is what we are attempting to do over here. The revised plan at this time addresses most of the concerns that were raised in our previous review letters that were done in June of 2022 and December of 2022. It is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for Downtown Inn to be located at 1100 North Main Street, subject to 5 conditions. Replacement of bumper blocks defining the edges of the main circular driveway. The height of the vinyl fence along the east property line not to exceed 8 feet. Replacement of existing wall-mounted light fixtures with new shielded fixtures or addition of shields to existing fixtures. Installation of 2 ornamental trees along the site's frontage landscape area. Irrigation and maintenance of all landscaping in compliance with the ordinance standards. I would be happy to answer any questions the Planning Commission might have. Thank you.
Any questions for the planner? Okay, is the petitioner with us tonight? While they're coming up, the issue I have is the safety of that sidewalk. I know it's pre-existing. Has anything been discussed with the petitioner in terms of ways to improve it, visually, stripe it? I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but.
Not to my knowledge, you're right, existing condition. I guess you could paint yellow stripes through it or something, but.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
So the parking lot itself is asphalt and the sidewalk is cement. So
That's my understanding, yeah.
visibly, there's a difference.
And it's along the property line, as I understand it.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns with it is, just from like the pictures, you see pickup trucks that extend beyond the parking spots. And so they do block that sidewalk from time to time, or a portion of it, pushing people more towards, the ramp. And if you're walking by with a kid on a bike or a stroller or something like that, that can become
So were that
potential
to
hazard.
be designated, painted off, or whatever the case may be, it would at least warn the parker that you're in the walkway, not fully into the. Nick, I don't know what you think about that. I don't want to create problems for these gentlemen, but on the other hand.
Yeah, you just don't want to push them closer to the street. So I understand, but there is differentiation of the colors, Sarah's right. Commissioner King's right.
How about painting a crosswalk from the north to the south side before you get to the motel? Just throwing that out.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm the owner of.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So where the sidewalk on the north side ends
Yeah.
before your property, you paint a crosswalk to the sidewalk on the south side.
That's a good idea.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. Gentlemen, you heard the planner's presentation, her 5 points. I know you've been over this. Any difficulty with those 5 requests?
No, not at all. I do agree with all that.
And you'd add the 6th one to
6 all the last time.
paint in the, I'd ask that they do it with the administration's oversight. Okay. All right, this is scheduled. Any questions for the petitioners?
So your comment is to stripe the sidewalk?
No, my comment is stripe across the street where the north sidewalk hits their property line, directing people to the south side
Oh, I see.
sidewalk.
Okay.
And then out to Rochester Road.
Okay.
Out to Main Street. People can choose to do what they want, but at least it's, the safety's designated.
It would, well, it would
Since we're-
actually be the east to west
So up here,
versus north to south, right?
The
Along-
striping would probably be across the street, though, from north to south.
I think that Sarah was talking about across the driveway, letting you know that you're going, you're still behind the cars. I think that's, you're talking about.
I'm talking about not going behind the cars,
Across at the
creating a crosswalk
is it Terry
on their
Street?
east property line.
Terry.
Across Terry Street to the south side sidewalk,
Oh, so directing people to go to the other
Yes,
side of the
yes.
street.
and not go behind the cars.
Oh, I see. So like some type of crosswalk.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah. It may require a sign or something,
There's a
but,
crosswalk right there, but.
Yeah.
At Second Street, we don't want people walking on the south side of Second Street to cross by Toulouse.
Yeah.
So it's go this way, go this way, go this way, same thing, so.
and they can choose to do what they want, but at least it's designated.
Yes, I think
Okay.
so.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? David?
Yeah, since we're asking about doing some things, could you add signage for the 2 handicap parking spaces, whether they're on the building or on a pole, not just on the ground?
Yeah, I got
And
a
then-
design over here.
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the idea that painting on the sidewalk would alert the driver, hey, wait, I'm in a situation where I should try to get out of the way, and I thought that was a great idea. I like the idea of diverting pedestrian traffic across the street, but I also like the idea of the driver having to be a little more conscientious.
Could you
that-
paint a line at the, along your property line at the rear of the parking spaces?
Well, we can do that, yeah, that's
Okay.
simple. It's no problem.
Simple one line. Yeah.
Just-
It's just the visuals.
It's an awareness that, hey, I'm not just my parking spot, because drivers I
Yeah.
don't pay attention all the time, I don't imagine everyone does.
All right, Christian?
The signage on the front of the building where it says the Downtown Inn.
Yes.
And it's in that script. You've got the, looks like almost Arial fonts for the and in. And then it's got the,
Can you see that?
that's it. I was gonna say, how married are you to that? You're pretty well married, so. Glad you like it.
Thanks for the compliment.
You're welcome. Yes, I'm gonna tell you how great it looks, yeah.
All right, this item is scheduled for a public hearing tonight, and it is now 8:32. We'll consider the public hearing open. And I'm going to ask if anyone in the audience or connected with us electronically has any comments about the proposed site plan approval for the Downtown Inn. And hearing none, we'll close the public hearing at 8:33. Back to the commissioners for consideration. I think we now have 7 items or 6 items.
Six.
The 6th item will be the painting of the crosswalk and the line
Line at the end of the
behind the
spaces.
parking
Then
space.
handicap signage too is mentioned.
Oh, yep. 7
So
will
that
be
makes
hand-
7, the handicap. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved,
So moved to include the 7 items as
Correct.
discussed.
as discussed.
Is there support for the motion?
Support.
Supported by Ms. King. Any other discussion? The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord,
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good luck
Thank
to
you,
you.
guys.
We
Appreciate it. Thank
look
you.
forward to the improvements and hope you have great
That'll look
success.
great. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Okay. All right, that's the end of the public hearings. Next is number 6, considerations. The first one, A, Blake Realty, 411 Main, exterior facade. Who's going to handle this? Video?
Myself,
Okay.
yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll put up the site plan on the screen for you. Okay, this is the building facade. So we have reviewed a proposal from Mr. Blake on behalf of North Oakland Investment to operate a real estate office in an existing one-story building with facade updates. You're familiar with the site. It's on the west side of Main Street between West 4th and West University and is zoned Central Business District. Professional and administrative offices are permitted by right in the district. I want to add a clarification here. Planning Commission has considered and passed on an amendment not allowing for real estate or office uses on the first floor of buildings in the downtown. I don't know if that amendment has passed City Council yet. However, this applicant had applied long before that ordinance amendment was considered and was already in the process, so we have to honor the request based upon the ordinance at the time when they applied first.
Thanks for that clarification.
The applicant received site plan approval in early 2019, and at the time they had proposed addition of a second story which had a living unit and additional office space. And they had a lot of facade improvements proposed to both the front facade and the rear facade on the alley. After that approval was granted, the applicant did not proceed with the project, and over a period of time, all of those approvals became null and void. So the two-story project is no longer on the table. At this time, the new proposal is to maintain the single-story building as it is and do facade improvements. The facade facing Main Street and the rear facade are to be constructed with limestone tile. I'll zoom in. The applicant has submitted a rendering, so I'll try to go to this rendering, which would probably help the Planning Commission see better what is proposed. If you can just see here. The applicant is proposing to use limestone tile, black metal awnings over here, and this is another awning to be put on there with wall-mounted decorative light fixtures and creation of a door and new windows. A new cornice is proposed, which is EFS on top, and basically this cornice is added in order to help tie it to the single-story buildings that are on either sides of it. We have reviewed the proposal and it has gone back and forth a couple of times. So there are just a few additional items that I want the applicant to address before they come back for a public hearing and approval. Now, previously, the building was classified as a retail use and was grandfathered in for a certain number of parking spaces. Now, the proposed change is to an office use. An office is a less intensive use than a retail use. So likely no additional parking spaces are going to be required for the use. However, the applicant does need to provide us with that numbers so that we know how much of the extra parking that they were grandfathered in is being freed up because the use profile is being lowered to a less intensive use by the applicant's proposal. The applicant site plan, if you see, I will go back to the site plan. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going to page 65. If you look at the site plan, this is the front facade and this is the rear facade on the alley. On the site plan, they do show, yes, I will zoom into the site plan. It is on a smaller sheet. So the site plan does show a planter in the middle of their sidewalk on the alley. Even though it is within technically the paver area, we would prefer it if the planter is moved closer to the door so that it doesn't obstruct pedestrians who might be walking down the walkway on the alley, or the alley is already narrow, there are going to be vehicles here. We would prefer that this be relocated closer to the door. Also, the floor plan that the applicant has submitted is a partial floor plan. If you look at the floor plan up here, all that is shown over here is the entrance of Main Street and a waiting area. We need to see a full floor plan for the building so we know how the office layout for the structure is. The response letter by the applicant says no change in operational hours. So I'm not sure what the operational hours are in order to determine if the operational hours are being changed. So if the applicant could just put the hours of operation, that would help. There are the elevations actually, if you look at the elevations, 2 wall-mounted light fixtures are shown next to the rear door, and next to the front door, there is 1 fixture shown. The lighting schedule has got 2 different fixtures on it, which does not correspond to anything that is actually on the plan itself. So the notation on the actual plan versus the notation on the lighting schedule needs to match to each other. So when it's actually being constructed, the correct fixture is being put up on the building wall. The applicant has submitted detail of a fixture, light fixture, and the fixture does meet ordinance standards. So at this time, it is our recommendation that the applicant submit the information that we have requested in our letter. They don't need to revise the whole site plan. The items that remain outstanding can be addressed in a letter written on a letterhead and signed by the applicant attached as an addendum to the site plan and submitted. I would recommend that the Planning Commission schedule this in your next available agenda for consideration of public hearing and site plan approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Vidya? Eric?
I'm just a little confused as to what's needed from this body. If it's a permit by right, what are we,
Facade.
and there's
It's a
no,
site plan for facade.
for facade?
It is a facade change, Commissioner Lord, so it does need to come back before the Planning
Yeah,
Commission
so
for approval.
nothing with the interior.
So change of use is and the facade are the 2 items?
It's just the facade.
Just the facade? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. I believe in the change of use from one principal permitted use to another principal permitted use is given by right and administratively handled. The reason they are before you is because they're changing the facade of the building.
Vidya, it sounds like no additional parking is needed. The question I have is if in the future they came in with a commercial use, the parking would have to be reassessed and it may result in a payment in lieu, depending on what's proposed.
Yeah, they would lose the non-conforming status of retail, and now the chart would get
So
amended
this
to
would not
office.
freeze that. It would have to be reconsidered again.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Could I have the applicant come forward, please?
Mike Blake, so I'm the.
Hi, Mike. Welcome. It's been a long time.
It's been a little while.
Yeah.
So I'm the broker owner of the real estate company. So we actually went through the whole process with Nick, and we already did reconstruct the whole interior of the building. So that has already been done.
Sounds like all you have to do is provide that to Vidya.
Yeah. So it sounds like, so going back, we were originally gonna do the 2 stories. And
Yes.
our architect, who I worked with and unfortunately paid him a lot of money, he was the design build. So the day we were supposed to sign, he increased the cost by $800,000 to do the job, after I already paid him $40,000 for the plans. So then I had to redo all the plans again. Then we finally got it done during COVID. And now, we didn't wanna start construction during the lights, because obviously I didn't wanna be that guy.
Yeah.
So now we wanna get started in the spring, and yeah, and I agree, there's a few things that I think, there is no change of use. So we already went through this with Nick, with the parking, so.
The site plan would be for a facade change.
Yeah.
And that would be the title of the public hearing.
Okay, perfect.
So as long as you supply to the Vidya and the administration the items required tonight, we should be ready to move forward.
Perfect. And I think,
We've already done it, we just said.
yeah, you guys, we've already submitted those things, so. We should.
Very good.
Always a lapse between when he gets to the point when we get back.
Good luck.
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman, may I ask
Yeah, David, go
for
ahead.
consideration to Mike? Granted, I guess, thank you for the explanation of your travels getting to where we are tonight. But generally, I would ask, is there a way for you to do some improvements on the handicap accessibility of this? And I'll refer back to Bitter Tom's that we just saw a minute ago. It was obscure, quick, but they showed a 45-degree cant on the corner of the, it's not up there anymore, but the entryway into your building is 3'4" wide on a slight bit of a slope. Almost impossible for someone ambulatory in a walker or a wheelchair to get in. And if you canted that corner, that would give them a chance to get out of the way of the door, swing of the door.
When you
Is it-
say canted, I don't.
Can't meaning put it on an angle, 45-degree angle.
We're not changing any of the structure of it, we're just putting,
I'm just asking for the consideration. You're doing a lot of work, and it's a, I'll say, relatively easy thing to do at this time.
Yeah.
It costs money, takes time, but I'm asking for that consideration, because you're making an improvement to a building that's going to be there, again, for a very long time before another thing changes.
Yeah,
And-
because what I was told, if I start moving any of the walls, then I have to go through the whole approval process, and I really don't wanna change any of the walls structure as it is. Then you gotta get into footings and everything else.
I'm not so sure it's that complicated.
And we have a dual entrance, we have full entry on the back as well with a brand new door that's grade level.
That's your official handicap
So-
access.
That's,
When I was thinking about this, I remember that from years ago now, but I think I understood that there's a difference where you have a different use in the back and the new use in the front.
no, all the same.
It's all the same, okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't before.
And,
Okay, so the change of use issue that I was equating to part of the issue is
and when.
no longer there.
When we designed the building, it's all handicap compliant now. So it's got the handrails, it's got the door that opens up properly.
Only in the back,
Yes, in the back.
okay.
But the walkway runs the whole way to the front.
Yeah, so the way the building was designed, the walkway goes straight through. You don't turn, there's no obstacles in between. It goes straight from the front door to the back door.
That's awesome,
So you can kind of see straight down.
okay. And I think in some other storefronts on Main Street in the past where you really do need to get to the back, a simple little sign, handicap accessibility is off the alley or something like that. I know your customers would appreciate that.
We had to add two ramps to get it to flow.
Internally.
Yeah, and then we
Yeah.
hid it inside of the walls and made offices, so you couldn't tell from the office to office how.
So it's
it was.
fully handicap accessible from the rear.
Yeah,
Which
which is where the
appropriate.
parking structure is.
Thank you for your
Okay.
consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Blake? Okay, we need a motion to set this for a public hearing at the next available date.
Real quick, I just have something, and
Yes.
this is not for specific necessarily to this project, although it does touch this project more for the city in general, and I've brought it up in the past. Our sidewalks are narrow, they're busy, we get a lot of foot traffic. I know we encourage people to put planters out front because they are nice, they're aesthetically pleasing, but it presents, I think, a lot of problem given the volume of foot traffic we have, especially around the lights. Seasonal, whenever there's events, it is really hard to navigate our sidewalks.
You can see
If you have a
that.
stroller, it's, impossible. I couldn't imagine somebody in a wheelchair, how difficult it can be. There's people with dogs. I think this is a bigger issue than this one project, but we're encouraging planters, and I don't know if that is the best solution for our city.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
I believe you had raised this question before, so I had made it a point not to request planters for any of these proposals that come on Main Street along their frontage. This planter is being proposed on the rear alley side next to the door. They're not adding any new planters on Main Street because I remember the Planning Commission having a discussion saying with outdoor dining and with the existing planters that the DDA has already put in, navigating with the stroller and all is very difficult. So I don't believe the applicant is adding any new planters at this time on Main Street. What's shown on the site plan is what already exists along their frontage.
So on page 60, the 3 planters,
There's planters showing on
those
the
are,
drawing.
Yeah,
they're
they're on the
existing.
elevations, that you see.
They're on
three
the
of them there.
elevations.
Let me just go, if you would give me 1 second, let me pull up the,
Not necessarily because you required them, but they're just on there for the architect.
They were originally required.
In the
For
original?
the first time, I would prefer not to have
Yeah,
them.
you can take them off, it's okay.
yes, I started telling them not to put any more planters along Main Street. I'm not sure if the applicant had it from their, it says existing planter, let me
It's
just
in the,
zoom
it's in
in.
the elevation.
It's on the very first page of
Yeah,
elevations.
It's on the elevation,
Page 60.
It's on the elevations, okay.
the picture.
Yep.
Keep going.
Where did the picture go? The picture was on page, give me 1 second, please, it's 60, page 60.
Keep going. There you go.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, I believe that is more of an artistic rendering by the applicant, but we are not requiring any planters along Main Street.
That's good to know.
You can eliminate them.
How about, when I look at the back alley and I walk up and down every day, one of the biggest eyesores are the planters that you guys require, because nobody ever keeps them up. The cars hit them nonstop. And in the winter, they're absolutely horrific to look at. So just the consideration that it should
Thanks
be
for
more,
pointing that out.
something more permanent, because I walk up and down you probably see them. Nobody ever waters them. There's a bunch of dead flowers, or they're blowing down the alley. So,
Or they've been hit.
yeah.
Gotcha. We'll consider that.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice catch, Sarah. Yeah, good catch. Okay, did we, I don't remember, did we do this for,
Motion to place on next agenda?
moved by David, do we have support? Support. Supported by Mr. Lord. The roll call, please.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lord.
Yes.
Thank you. 6B, Ellie on Main, 1120 North Main, site plan approval. What
Yes.
is Ellie on Main?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will put up the site plan on the screen for you so you can actually see the site plan. It is, okay.
Do you know what this is?
There you go.
It's a beautiful.
I hope everybody can see the site plan up here.
That'll,
Okay. This is Main Street and this is Highland Avenue. This is the northeast corner of Main and Highland. So we have reviewed a proposal from Mr. Damiano Di Mercurio to demolish an existing single-story structure and build a new two-story office building. The site, as I mentioned, is at the northeast corner of Main and Highland Avenue and is zoned O2, which is Restricted Office District. The site is currently occupied by a single-family residential style structure that is being used as an office with a small parking lot on the east side of the building. So although the structure is residential, it's a home that has actually been adapted to an office for its current use, and the applicant is demolishing and building a new structure. So business, administrative office, and professional offices are permitted by right in the O2 district. The applicant has submitted a site plan that has got a lot of details on it. There are a few things that are missing that I'll go over quickly so that the applicant can then make their presentation and explain to the Planning Commission. So first of all, the site plan needs to have the legal description of the property on it. It's one of the most important aspects. There are two proposed access drives of Highland Avenue into the site. This is, if you can see this outline over here, all of this is under the building parking. There is actually an extension of this building over here, this double dashed line. So all of these parking spaces are under the building itself. And both of these aisles are 24 feet wide, leading to in and out parking and access. My concern was that when you have parking head to head and you have the upper story supported by pillars, some measures need to be taken to protect those pillars from vehicles pulling in too far forward and actually hitting those columns. So to be careful of that. To also stripe both of these access drives in and out to show lanes of ingress and egress. So somebody visiting the site for the first time doesn't think this is in and this is out. This is its own self-contained area and this is. So in and out is for both of the sides. The police department in its original preliminary review did express concerns that they did not want traffic from this site going down the residential street. So all traffic that is coming out of the site, there needs to be sign at both the access drives saying no left turn out. They have to turn right and head towards Main Street only to prevent office traffic from going down a residential street side. Now to your east of the site on Highland Avenue, all this is R1, single family residential district. Now the ordinance requires a minimum 10-foot setback for all parking from residential that is on the same block as the non-residential use. Now the proposed green belt that you see along Highland Avenue is only 2.5 to 4.5 feet wide. The ordinance requirement is 10 feet. So Nick and I had a conversation with the applicant's architect on March 20th, and the applicant is proposing to seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the green belt width. But in order to make sure that when seeking the variance, they meet the intent of the ordinance for screening, the applicant proposes to install shrubs and possibly a low decorative brick wall along the frontage. The whole point of requiring a 10-foot greenbelt is to provide separation between parking and the public sidewalk and to provide certain measure of screening of vehicles. So the applicant is going to seek a variance and is going to provide hardscape elements such as brick wall and some landscaping in the form of shrubs to make up. The planning commission has the discretion to modify the number of parking spaces to be provided green belt.
Video, you're breaking up real badly.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No.
I'm close to the microphone.
That happened before.
No.
Yeah, we made it so far this time, yeah.
Let me increase the audio.
Or maybe
I stopped sharing. Can you hear me more clearly now?
Still broken up.
Yeah.
Maybe suggest logging off and logging
Can
back
you
in.
hear me now?
Can you log back on again?
always a solution, right?
Yeah, just turn it off.
Okay, can you, let
What's
me
that?
try this one more time?
Do you have another microphone on, Vidya, a different microphone on your machine? Is there two?
No, I'm using the same microphone what I was using all this while.
Okay.
Log off. It's unusual. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, take your time, log on again.
We can have the petitioner present if you'd like. what
Can you
she's doing.
hear
Is
me
the
now?
petitioner available? Please come forward.
Vidya, hang on, we'll have Mr. Abernathy make his presentation.
Okay.
That's right, she was gonna, we need Vidya to put the site plan back in.
Good evening.
By the time you get that, she'll probably get back up, so maybe you just explain what you're doing, Mark.
You want to
Sure.
introduce yourself?
Yes. Good evening, I'm Mark Avenatha with Alexander Bogarts, the architects for the project.
Welcome.
We also have with us the developer, Damiano with Deluso Building here tonight to answer any questions you might have. So as Vidya was mentioning, excuse me, we're proposing demoing the existing house that's there that's currently being used by Deluso Building.
Mark, hang on a second. Vidya, can you pull up the site plan again and while he's talking, we can just show.
Yes.
Could you pull up the
Yes.
colored
Can you
land?
hear me now?
No, it's the
it's
same
still
thing,
bad.
so unfortunately.
Can
Maybe
she do
pull the
audio
landscape
on her
plan.
phone separately? Can she call in audio on her phone separately?
Didn't we?
Yes.
We almost made it through a meeting with Zoom not doing this.
You have a lot of trouble with this?
Yep.
Okay.
Vidya, could you pull up the colored landscape plan?
Here's Vidya right here, so. All right, Vidya, go ahead.
Well, can't she call into Zoom with her phone?
I don't know.
We're almost there.
Brian?
Yeah, we were just wondering if you could call into the Zoom number, but go ahead.
Let me see if I can find it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know why it suddenly started glitching, but I'm going to find the pipeline of 350.
Nick, put it by your microphone.
On her phone? She just has to enter the Zoom
Code.
number? Yeah.
All right, Vidya, we got too many things going on. Vidya, if you try calling 646-876-9923.
Hey, Dennis, I just got a call from Leanne. She said she can hear Vidya clear as a bell. No echo or anything.
So it's here then.
What does that
So
mean?
it's in here, so.
It's in here.
When you call Zoom, you just have to enter the room number, meeting ID.
Yep. If you just put in the room number ID, then you'll be on our audio, I think. Anytime you guys are ready to say nobody can be on Zoom anymore, that's okay with me. No, it's easier for these guys, but.
What else would we use?
Make them come here.
There's other services.
I understand what's. Video, while you're doing that, if you can get up the colored landscape plan Mark's asking for.
No.
No, if you could, Video, just put up the, oh,
She has to turn off her audio on the other.
you have to turn off the audio on your computer. No.
We're on Mars.
Can you hear me now?
It's still broken up.
Can you hear me?
It must be
Just
us.
have, put up the site.
I'm calling the Zoom through the phone, and I can hear you.
Yeah, it's not working. So if you can just put up the, what do you want, Mark?
The colored
The
landscape.
colored landscape plan on your screen?
And then have her call you again.
It must
And
be
you can
our Zoom.
relay.
I,
So close. All right, let me get you on speaker here. Okay. Okay, let me get you up. There you go. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, apologies, I don't know what's going on. If I can have screen sharing ability, I will put up Mr. Abenatha's landscape plan on the screen for you.
Leanne, that would be you.
So, I'll continue with my review till Leanne gives me screen sharing ability. So, a couple of other items that were required was clarification regarding loading, unloading, and delivery for the site. A revised landscape plan that basically showed us where the various fixtures that are noted on your light plan is going to be presented. Now, the illumination level on your photometric plan exceeds what the ordinance comments in several areas. Basically, the light trespass goes beyond the property lines. So the illumination intensities need to be adjusted so that all light is contained within the site itself. We also need details of the screen wall along the east property line. The applicant has provided elevations of all the facades and a really attractive rendering on the eastern facade and the southern facade and the Main Street facade. And I'll put it on the screen once Leanne gives me screen sharing ability so the planning commission can see what the building is going to look like. So at this time, the applicant has submitted a site plan packet that has got most of the required information with the exception of a few minor details. Once a revised plan is submitted, we recommend that the planning commission places it on your next agenda for consideration of site plan approval.
Thank you, Vidya.
Thank you, Video.
I'll be inside, she should.
Okay, you should be able to share now. Yep, there we go. Okay. There you go.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Vidya while we're at this? Okay. Now, if you would reintroduce yourself.
Sure, Mark Abenatha with Alexander Bogarts
Hi, Mark.
Architects for the project. Hi.
So you're able to hear the planner?
Yes. Yeah, and we've already reviewed her letter, and we are working on responses, hoping that we can move the project forward to a public hearing.
Everything seemed understandable to you?
Yes, everything's understandable. We had a conference call, Nick and Vidya and I went through everything. I just briefly want to discuss the project. So we're raising the existing building, which is roughly right in here. We're proposing a new two-story office building, which is at grade entrance here with lobby, and I can go through the architecture really quickly, but come into the main lobby and a space here, elevator, go up, and you have a space here and a space here over this covered parking. Two entrance points here and here that Vidya mentioned into our parking. The building is roughly 5,500 square feet, roughly 17 on the first floor and 38 on the second floor. Vidya, could you go to the rendering that shows the building in context off Main?
Yes.
Thank you.
Scrolling, I think it's.
those are our elevations, the 3D rendering.
Yeah, this is the last sheet. I believe the rendering might be a sheet ahead, so you want the rendering, the colored rendering.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
further up. I think the rendering is the beginning of the project.
That's correct.
Sheet 76.
Remember back in the old days, we'd have flip charts and we'd say,
Yeah.
put them up on the easels and all that good stuff. Old school.
If you go to the next rendering, either before or after that, probably after. And then you have to zoom out. Zoom all the way out, please.
Okay.
Yeah, can you show both our building and the building to the south in context?
To the left a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's
Gotcha.
just
Yep, you're good.
Moving slow,
a little slower.
right.
There you go.
So when we designed the building, obviously there's a lot of what is going on currently on Main in terms of redevelopment. This was obviously single family all along Main, rezoned to O2. And when we designed the building, we wanted to respect not only the neighborhood east of us and north of us, which is zone O2, and then existing projects to the south. So you can see the scale and the architecture of the hip roofs relative to the scale and the hip roofs on this. The materials that we're using for the building are predominantly brick with accents of stone. We have asphalt shingles. We have limestone detailing at all of the windows. Video, if you could go to the next rendering, which is the Highland Street. That gives you a better idea of the overall architecture. This is, as I mentioned, the main entrance into the building here. We have another entrance on the northwest side off of a sidewalk going out to the sidewalk on Main. Then you can see this portion of the building that is covered, that covered parking, and then the open parking in the back. This is the area that I was talking about up at the top. There's one large lease space, another lease space here, and then another lease space here. We've done different things like create different window elements arched here with glass, raise this element, entry element up, put stone coins in. So there's a lot of very traditional but architectural detailing, the double bracketing here that relates to what's going on in the city now, as well as just overall architectural detailing, creating what we're considering a very elegant building. What we're trying to do, two of the key issues that was brought up by Vidya that we want to discuss. One is the parking and that setback to Highland Road. The whole purpose behind that is to create a buffer between the parking and the pedestrians going by and vehicular and screening that parking. And we think we have a very good solve to that with hedge detail here, and then obviously on the back we're going to have a screen wall. And we'd like to propose strictly at this point in time the hedge detail. It's a combination of two different hedges. Back in the back there's going to be arborvitae. If you look at the more detailed plans, this is artist rendering, but arborvitae here, and then arborvitae here, and then boxwoods here. On the corner, it's going to be roughly trimmed up at a growth of 6 feet, but all of this we're proposing to be around 36 inches. We just feel that the landscape hedge is going to be a much softer look, much more in keeping with the architecture and in keeping with the scale and what's going on as you go further down Highland, as opposed to try and do some combination of a masonry wall. Because if you do a masonry wall, then you're eliminating the hedge and you're having to have some type of very low growth down at the grade. So our preference when we go to, hopefully to the next level here and then go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, is to strictly go with a hedge, not a combination of wall and hedge. And as I said, we just think it's a softer and better look. I've talked at length with our landscape architect. He's comfortable that with a building of this scale, if it's maintained properly, especially in the first number of years when the hedge is put in, that it can grow and mature and do a good job. I know there was some concern when Video and I were talking about it in terms of snow and different things along those lines, but in general, we're very comfortable that that will survive. The main thrust of the problem and why we're going to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we would hope that the Planning Commission would see this as well and have a positive look at it, is that this lot is basically a single-family lot. It was rezoned from single-family to O2. And once you try and put an office building with some scale on it that matches, as you can see, what's going on south of us and what's developing up and down Main, and you put a decent-sized building on, you're required to have a certain amount of parking. That lot is only 54 feet wide. Once you put the building on and you park it so that you can properly park it for what's required by the ordinance, you're left with a smaller than 10 feet, or you're pinched. So that's the problem, the narrowness of the lot, in order to be able to balance what I think the vision of the community was, which is to have these lots redeveloped with buildings like this. So we believe that, you know, this is a very reasonable and a positive direction in terms of how to deal with that parking. It's going to augment what's required from the standpoint of being able to screen those cars as you drive by, and I think fit very well with the community and the streetscape that's there. The other thing is, Vidya had mentioned recommending having a rendering of the rear of the building. We have elevations which are in the packet, and you saw them briefly, all the way around the building. We have our streetscape showing the context and the massing along North Main, and we have this rendering. We really think that we've provided a very detailed set of plans that anyone, when they look at those elevations and they look at these renderings, see what we're trying to do here from an architectural standpoint.
What is it that Video wants?
She's suggesting that we do a rendering on the back side of this building, and I just don't think that's necessary.
Do we have an elevation that shows?
Yes, we have elevations of that. We have elevations of all four sides of the building. They're all noted as to what all the materials are. We've done a very detailed set of plans so that the community and the Planning Commission can understand the architecture. All of the other comments that she has in here, we're addressing them currently. We've revised our lighting plan. The engineers are going to be noting up the inbound, outbound striping. We'll have signs posted as to no left turns. So there isn't really anything that we object to. We would just, like I said, we'd like to see the hedge in lieu of a low wall there, or any combination of the two, and we would like to not do that rear rendering. We just don't think
Vidya,
it's necessary.
can you explain the reason for just to complete the package, the rear rendering?
The reason I requested the rear elevation was because that is the facade that is facing the single-family dwelling to the east. If the Planning Commission thinks the west elevation and the south elevations are adequate enough to give an visual of how the east elevation is going to look, I'm fine with it. I just thought when the applicant has two elevations, to do the site that actually faces the single-family dwelling will be useful when we have a public hearing, in case the residents have an idea of how this building is going to look from their property looking east.
Mr. Chairman. Any thoughts on that?
I'm fine without it. I mean, we've got the black and white elevations and material call out. It's gonna be consistent with the other two elevations in application, so I'm okay with it.
So,
What's the cost to do that?
Another rendering?
Yeah.
Could be in like 2,500.
Yeah, I'm fine without it.
okay.
Yeah.
Nick, how would this timing go? We would schedule for a public hearing,
For our May meeting?
and he would have to have site plan approval and then go to the zoning board of appeals? Okay. All right. Any questions for this gentleman?
Just,
Yeah, I had a quick, so the parking, it can be underground parking?
No, under the building.
Under that.
Correct.
Second part.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
so we don't have a say relative to, the setback on the parking,
Yeah,
as well as the hedge too, right?
Right, in some instances, in a couple of districts, it says the planning commission may substitute a wall for, in this one, it does not. So Vinnie and I went over that, we tried every way to have this board have the latitude,
But for
but it's not.
purposes of the zoning board of appeals, we could make a recommendation.
Absolutely, and then I write the cases, so the hardship, and Mark talked about that.
Whereas
Hardship
if we
is the
saw an
depth of the
objection,
lot.
we would also voice that.
Absolutely, absolutely, so, yep. We can support this.
Is that understandable? Sarah?
Yeah, I just have a question. I'll make sure I'm looking at these drawings correctly. The parking on in the area, the first half, where you have the covered parking, is there parking also outside of those pillars?
Yes, Vidya mentioned, you see this heavy dashed line right here?
Yep.
And this is really protruding out too far. This is just a faux balcony back here, and it's barely out in front of the building. And then this is the building here. So these two spaces here and these two spaces here are outside of that cover.
Okay.
And outside of the setback.
If we make a recommendation on the hedges, I think the hedges actually look nice. I think
It is.
it's
Versus
preferred in
more
my
brick.
mind over a brick wall. My only concern would be the height of them and the visibility for people pulling out of there.
They have to stay at 36.
You said
Yeah,
36
we're
inches, right?
36 is
Okay,
what- yeah,
all
we
right,
don't
maybe
wanna-
the drawing just showed him, it appears taller. I just want to make sure that we're,
Well, so you can see.
but I think they,
Are they truly 36? Because in the schedule, they're listed as 18 inches tall.
I think if, he's got a note on the landscape plan that is kind of up in this area that talks for, and this is the site plan, I'm just saying, if you look at the landscape plan right here in your packets, it says to be knit and kept at 36 inch.
I think they're 18s going in, up to 36.
Well, my point is, if you put them in at 18, it's going to take 5 or 6 years to hit 36.
But they have to be maintained and not to exceed 36.
Yeah.
Yeah, boxwoods are very slow growing.
Can I ask a question of Nick?
Yes.
How many square feet is the Morgan Stanley?
I think 10.5.
Because this building looks bigger.
It isn't actually. I
looks-
think Morgan Stanley's wider, I think, going to the south.
Yeah.
I'll confirm that
and
though, but I'm pretty sure
shallower.
I'm right, yeah.
Yeah.
From just a picture, it looks
Yeah,
And
I'll
the
confirm that.
massive.
The height as well, you know, that, the high steep roof adds a lot of mass.
I think it's a very sharp building, though.
Thank you.
Hey, you did a very nice job.
We're
Seriously.
very excited about the project.
Can I ask, will this multi-tenant, or what's the purpose of Ellie? Who is Ellie?
Do you want to speak to that?
No.
Ellie?
Good evening, Damiano De Mercurio. The question of Ali, it's just the name of the project there.
Okay.
That's it.
It's not the business that's coming?
No.
So it could be 1 to 3 tenants in this building?
Potentially, correct.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Ellie's a code.
Correct.
Right?
It's an acronym for the kids' names, I bet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are ready to consider a motion here to set this for a public hearing.
There you go.
Anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lord. Do we have support?
Support here.
Supported by Christian. This is set this for a public hearing at an appropriate time as the administration sees fit. Any other discussion? The roll call.
McGee,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjic,
Yes.
King,
yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
I got that number.
Okay, item number 7, miscellaneous. Nick?
Thank you. You can see things are real slow around town these days. They're gonna keep coming. We have 2 or 3 more large projects coming.
We are
down.
loved,
Mayor,
and,
we
it's
are
good
very
to
much
see.
loved, so I'm excited. So I have one that's a little bit wonky and then 2 positive things, and I'll keep them short as the basketball game's on. If you've noticed, I know the mayor's got a lot of calls. I've got a lot of calls. Construction stopped on the brownstones on Main, sadly. So Mr. Schneider, it's a little embarrassing for him, but I don't know the circumstances, but the financing was pulled from the project after the storm, did $1 million worth of damage. The insurance company paid out. Greg started the process, Mr. Schneider started the process, rebuilt the second unit. Unbeknownst to him, something happened in his financing team, stopped, they pulled the financing. So if you've seen it in the paper, I think they actually technically foreclosed on the project. People are bidding on it. We expect it will not be an issue. He'll probably stay involved in it. It's simply his bank did what banks can do to you, I guess, and slowed it down. So if we've made a commitment, that's, if you remember, the very first project that we ever got a bond for. If something went wrong for over
thank
6
God.
months, then we could
Right.
have to rip it all out. So don't anticipate that, but that's why it's slowed down. He's got the stuff ready to go, his contracts are ready to go. He's just got to make this formal decision with another financer. And I know 2 or 3 people have already called saying that they want to back the project. So if you see it slowed down, that's why. All right, but on the good news, St. 1881, the old church on Walnut, that the folks at the brunch house, Liz and our men, is about to open next week. They're probably going to have a soft opening. We might get invited to that. It's a coffee and cocktail bar, spectacular. It's
Any entertainment?
Nope, it's just straight up coffee shop, and then at night craft cocktails, et cetera. Again, with the Roxy there and everything, they're very excited, and we can't wait for it to open. Armand is very passionate about that project and said, I'm not opening it until I can have my outdoor patio ready to go, because that's part of the European flair of that project. So I think in 2-3 weeks, you're gonna see that open, which is very exciting. And then if you noticed today, or you went to try to buy salt, at the elevator has now ceased operation. So there's a little bit of salt left inside the Blue Barn until they sell it out. Mr. Smith owns Oxford Farm and Feed, where I used to always go get my salt when we lived in Lake Orion. So his boys are still running that operation. So Mosheri and Rewald have continued now to clear the site. They will not touch the elevator proper, the historic part,
That
until.
deal closed?
Yes, so they own the property now, Mosheri/Rewald own the property. They'll be coming here as soon as we change the line, so they can come here. So their drawings are in. Lydia got them last week. She's gonna start the review so we can speed it up a bit. So she's agreed to do that. She's not.
And what will be built?
So it looks like the initial plans that I saw were 3-story live work. So remember, that's a dirty site, so they're trying to try to minimize how much they dig into that ground.
And they cannot put residential on the dirt?
They can, but they can't put basements in there. It'd be very, very difficult. So the plan that we saw was, if you can picture on water, close up to the barn, the elevator would stay in the corner. About 3/5 of the elevator is the historic portion. That gets redone, restored, becomes part of their clubhouse, open to the public, reading room with a park and benches on the outside. So 3 stories, and on University and on Water, 3 stories. Straight up. Now you rent, those are apartments, you rent your unit. 2 stories of living, first floor is office. But you can't rent the office to somebody else. It's truly live work, and that's how they are marketing that. On the backside, on the Sunrise side, those are condominiums, same thing, 3 stories, self-parked into the building, don't need any parking waivers. They're minimizing the disruption in the middle of the property, because they have to put big tanks to store the water to clean it.
The 3-story still first floor office?
Correct.
But not similar to the building?
It is not, and it's not mixed use per se technically, because you have to rent or own the unit. And we showed it to some of the folks of the historic group, and it's very well done, being very well received. It's not overbuilding, it's only 30 units. It's 2.5 acres with only 30 units, so they're not jamming this thing at all, and I think it's gonna be really pretty. So Vidya's gonna take a run at it in the next month. We'll have them here probably in June.
Okay.
For the first shot. Even if the project gets this, or the amendment to the boundaries gets the city council, we know it's heading in the right direction, they're willing to take the chance to start the ride with the planning commission, and then it'll catch up as we go through. So that's very exciting. And then a couple other projects down by the cement plant. Mr. LaChurco's got 2 projects there, one up against the bridge abutment that we saw that we referred to as 251 diversion before, that, and then his buildings are scaled down to now, I think, 4 stories and less units and townhomes on that plant, on that site. We met with the Brownfield folks for Mr. Randazzo's project at First Street Lofts, no, at, the Riverfront Lofts, sorry. And I'm meeting with our staff this Thursday to go over if a Brownfield plan went through the Brownfield Authority, went to City Council and was approved, what schedule are you looking at? Down to the details of where's the dirt going, when are you taking it? So we want all those answered for the Brownfield Committee and ultimately to City Council to decide if they're willing to work on it.
His intention is to build that project.
That is correct.
All right.
So he
If
has
he
not
gets the
done.
Brownfield.
Yeah. The Brownfield, I think, Mr. Randazzo, the initial investigation was about, I'm gonna say, less than 500,000 in bad dirt, and now it's really, once they did all the environmental work, it's 1.7 million.
Okay.
So that's a breaker for anybody, and, but Tony has not backed off, and he said he'd appreciate working through the process. He's got a great team, we've got a great team, we've already got it all hammered out, so it goes to the authority in a couple of weeks, then it'll come back. The plan's the same, nothing's changed here, elevations, it's gonna go to City Council for consideration of a brownfield. And if they're successful or not, he'll have to make the decision, but right now it appears that they're ready to go. So that's good news. And I think that's it.
Okay, how about Main Street? That was also the old gas station, south end.
Yep, thank you. So I've seen the elevations of that building, so I met with the architects, which the owners would be Anthony Lombardo and Chris Perot from Dan's. So they are under option, hard money. They don't own it technically until they get through site plan approval. And that was a 3-story building with 3 stories of it's office on the first floor. Believe it or not, it's 20,000 square feet of office on the first floor because the way they can park it, and then park below it. And then
All parking
condos,
below
all parking
Main.
below, and then 8 condos on the second floor, and then 2 condos on the third floor, and they're really large. One's 12,000 feet, one's 8. The 2 owners would live there.
Can they do office on the first floor?
Yeah, so they can do, because they're south of Second Street. Remember, we made sure, for that reason, and they're self-parking, and no driveways onto Main Street. They just said, we're gonna.
Everything from down.
Everything from
below.
down, and we're working with them on the alley with our DPW and stuff, so I'm anticipating that's gonna be here this summer.
That
and could
includes
be
the
pretty exciting.
cleaners?
Yes, they have both buildings.
Okay.
Yep, so
And
we're,
the strip center will remain?
yes, Penn Station, and they'll stay there. And they'll build it back a bit. It's got a plaza in the front, it's a beautiful building, so, we're looking forward to that. So, busy times, and we'll keep it going. Solaronics, if anybody's watching it, we have not had a word of conversation in the last month, so we'll
Well,
see what
whatever.
happens, yeah, don't know for a fact, so. They have not officially withdrawn at this point.
Okay. Any questions for the administration?
No, sir.
Any other business for the commission?
Do we have a second meeting in
Thank you,
April?
I'm glad that I have that note here. So, we went over the items last meeting, and we asked if anybody had any concerns about the 3 districts, let myself or Vidya know that we can incorporate into the public hearings that we'll have the 20th, I believe, so it's the 3rd Wednesday this month. And at that meeting, we'll give you 3 more districts to look at for the next, we're gonna keep the cadence going, so public hearing, then to city council, have them ready to go. Like Vidya said, at the end, we'll do the zoning map, the zoning ordinance, and we'll have this thing complete.
So the agenda for the second meeting is strictly the next
That's
3
it.
district?
We're gonna keep it to that. I don't wanna,
Yes.
we're gonna try not to mix anything up other than just zoning amendments.
Correct.
Okay, no projects?
No projects.
Okay.
We caught up now. Thank you for tonight. We're caught up with the backlog of everything and the developers that were making it difficult for Vidya. We are happy to say we're back on track, so.
Okay. Any other business? Chris?
No, I just telling you, okay.
Okay, nobody's begging to keep this going anymore?
No.
All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
I won't go until 11 PM.
Right? I still feel bad about that.